just the one package. And so it's not going to be a big update week, I suppose. And obviously the top thing on this palette is not anime. This is complete season 11 of the X-Files, which is pretty cool because me and my friend, we haven't finished watching this yet, so now we can watch the official DVD and stuff. Let's see, we got Saga of Tanya the Evil, the complete series. And this one is maybe this week's really notable thing, on account of the fact that I have a coworker that enjoyed it, I guess. Evil has many faces. Oh, look, regions A and B. And there's an English dub. I mean, at a minimum, even if it's there's a taste difference thing, watching this means conversation material. Unfortunately, the watching of anime has been really slow this week, so I don't know when I'll be able to get to this. Hopefully not too long. Let's see. Put that down. And we've got 12 episodes. Blu-ray 1 with the first 9, Blu-ray 2 with the last 3, DVD 1 with the first 7, and DVD 2 upside down with the last 5. So that seems to be the iconic imagery all over the place. Next up we have the release of Negima exclamation mark on Blu-ray. I think the other one's actually, the older one is slated to be. Okay. Yeah, that's right. This had an English audio, all 26 episodes on 3 discs. And, you know, this is kind of nice to have, I think. Who released this? Who released this? Sentai. Okay, yeah, well, they've got a backlog of stuff to release potentially on. Oh, okay, yeah, that's not going to get fixed. Especially with the piece right there. So, characters. And, last but not least, we have Twin Star Exorcists Part 2. Or Volume 2, or something 2. We are going to take the sticker off to make sure there isn't a lolly hidden on the hand. Nope. Just a fingernail. Let's get that, you know, stuff. Anyways, I see Region A, I see English dub, I see stuff. Takes 2 to raise hell. It's a weird tagline, but it kind of works. Yeah, they've made these really hard to open. I wonder if they started watching my videos and they're like, oh god, that guy's opening too easy. We need to make this harder. Yeah, so eventually I will get this thing opened. And we could also try this direction since that one had a weaker lip. Now, there we go. Set that aside, and let's see. We've got a reversible cover. We got Blu-ray Disc 1, 14 through 22, and Blu-ray Disc 2. Actually, this was Disc 3, and this is Disc 4 with episodes 23 through 26. And then we have DVDs 1 and 2. Disc 3 and Disc 4. And obviously I had to forget and put the insert. I forgot to put the insert in here. There we go. Wasn't feeling like it would close without unnecessarily crinkling. And I guess before I finish this up, I also grabbed a legendary distributions for Latios and Latias for Sun and Moon. And here's this week's anime DVD collection update.
So, I didn't watch much anime this week. Pretty much just Aokana. I guess I decided on it because it was English dubbed and it was curious looking. And it's been okay, kind of interesting. I'm not sure if it's done anything to super wow me, but it is interesting that it is a little ambiguous who the main character is in this series. What I mean by that is they kind of set up two people with classic main character backstories, and they seem to be having pink-haired girl on the front and the back be a primary story development sort of thing, but they're keeping him important enough that it's hard to tell if he was intended to be a harem character in this anime or a harem lead or not. Especially since it's not playing the harem elements as strongly as you would have thought based on the fact that, oh look, there's a bunch of girls, and if I told you that he's a helping coach one of them, then you'd almost wonder if maybe he's coaching others or something like that. But no, it's playing at a very different pace, and it's hard to tell if that means it's gonna be a waste of time or if it's gonna pay off if I keep watching it. But either way, it's just really interesting that it is what it is. But yeah, I think I've only watched like 4 or 5 episodes, so it's been very slow watching. Obviously, as you can probably guess, I've been playing video game stuff. Some of y'all, I think, have subscribed to my Twitch stream and have seen that, yeah, I've spent a lot of time monster hunting on there. And I'm not sure if I'd say I'm losing steam, but I would say I am. I did get the HTC Vive that I received last week set up, and I did set that up Wednesday evening, so I was working really hard at all of that, and it works really well. It's also great. I'm trying to think what to best talk about in terms of what I've done and what it means to use VR stuff, but for the most part I've found that there's a lot of well-defined fun ideas that are very VR specific and work specifically because they are VR. Some of them are obvious and some of them are, oh, I didn't realize it would be this fun to do this. But to begin with, of course, since it's HTC Vive, that basically means that it's Steam's virtual reality setup, so you get stuff set up through Steam. And, you know, I don't have the perfect area. I have to kind of push the edges slightly in order to get a playroom area, because I want to be able to move around, I guess. But you start out with a tutorial, which you know, it's actually a really neat tutorial. So if I introduce people to VR, I would always begin with that, just because it introduces them to the system and using the Vive controllers. By default, it starts at something called Steam VR Home, which is actually a very fun physics engine-y sort of thing with a bunch of little built-in things. You talk to people, you can design your avatar. It's not like a design it as a person thing so much as design it as a head with stuff. And of course, if you're creative, then you kind of add a sort of body to the head, which I've done a small variety of based on the few wearables that I've unlocked and other stuff. But for the most part, it's just kind of fun. And if you're curious, I did start doing VR chat stuff as well. I mean, if you... well, anyways. And it is interestingly disorienting to go between the two, because VR chat, of course, isn't a VR chat thing specifically for VR, but rather a VR inclusive thing, which includes a lot of people who don't have it. Which basically means that while I think the physics engine stuff in Steam VR Home is superior, VR chat has a superior meeting people experience, I suppose. like, because there's a mix of people in VR and people not in VR, you kind of get a real mix of different people interacting, trying to do different things, and it's fun. They've both been fun. Now, of course, those aren't really games, and there's other non-game things I've tried. I tried a Google Earth VR, which is actually very neat. It was neat to stand in downtown Austin and tower over, oh, this is a building at work, and to see, oh yes, the Frostbank Tower is definitely not the tallest, even though I knew there were two other things taller than it. You know, you can actually feel it when you're actually there in VR. I'm trying to think if there's other notable things, but I guess if we start bleeding over into games, there's been a couple of free games and a couple of paid for games that I've played with, and I haven't even touched everything. Like, I have Dread Halls, which is a horror game, I think that's what it was called, and I only tried it a little bit first night, or maybe the second night, and I can say for sure that it's interesting how the movement feels so weird. But for other stuff, I know as a purchase thing, I tried out Old Maid Girl, which is a very simple, it's not really a game so much as kind of a demo playing around with stuff. It's very, very cheap. You could buy it for $2, or you could get all the DLC for it for $6. That's 2 additional outfits and 1 additional scenery. And it's very interesting because what it does for you is it gives you a good feel for a VR person that's not a real person being there. And it isn't the best one like that I've seen per se, but it's definitely a good introduction to that general concept. I've played I think it's Kanojo VR, or VR Kanojo, or whatever it is. I think that one where you have the Japanese girlfriend that comes in. And this one is an interesting one where you can kind of start seeing the differences in the VR interpretation stuff and setup, because a lot of this other stuff is pretty straightforward, but this one, the VR Kanojo, was definitely designed such that you play it sitting down, or at least it expects you to start the game while sitting down, and so it kind of has an expectation of how you're positioned based on that. Because when I first played it, my legs were like a foot underneath the ground, and it was really weird, and it was hard to do certain interactions. But when I sat down starting the game, my feet were at the right level relative to the ground, and I was able to reach into things and configure things and look at things that I wasn't able to before. And these games are, you know, kind of more on the perverted side, so yeah, I think that's something that's just worthwhile to explore on VR. I mean, I haven't actually found out how to go do VR porn yet, because I read a couple of things on it, but then I got distracted and satisfied with all the stuff I was finding. But it seems to me that when you have such a radically new idea, there's a valuable question of how can I get porn on this thing? I think there's kind of a joke about that out there, about all new technologies being driven by that. But the funny thing about the VR stuff is it isn't solely driven by that, I thought. Because while the urge to look for that is there, it's kind of just satisfactory in a lot of ways, where you get lost in the fact that you're not in an apartment. It feels like you're in a very wide open space. Even if your movement is a little weird, you lose track of where you're standing in your space, because they have things that help you know when you're reaching the edges of it. But if you're staying in the middle and you're turning and all that stuff, and you're generally never going near the edges, then eventually you find out that you're actually facing complete opposite direction that you thought you were, which is a very fun thing. There's a unique shape to my space that allows me to reorient myself if I want to, and sometimes I use that to manipulate where the longer boundaries are, somewhere where I want to be able to walk in the VR space. But yeah, fun stuff. Let's see. Galgun VR has probably been the funnest game that I've played so far. It's kind of surprising because I remember seeing it before and thinking, it's a cute concept, but I don't really think I'm interested in it. And that's the non-VR version of it. And I guess part of that is the non-VR version seemed a little, click with the mouse stuff, and I don't know. It didn't strike me as something that you can just enjoy, I guess. Whereas the VR version, it's just really interesting. Like, there's some bleed over in terms of implementation details you can see in there, where, for example, in your left hand you'll have a gun that vacuums up little demon girls who may or may not have been in the old version. I'm guessing they were, but you didn't suck them up. But in this version, you can turn and you can shoot sideways with that. But for your main gun that does your normal shooting of the girls trying to confess you and giving them euphoria or whatever, satisfaction, the cursor is very accurate when you're aiming around, but if you turn to the side, even though you still have the gun pointed this way, the cursor stays at the edge of your field of vision because it's replicating the idea of a mouse on there. And I'm guessing that was the original controls for the game, just mouse, pew, pew, pew. But this time, it's, even with that, you can adjust that such that it doesn't distract from the gameplay too much, and then instead you've kind of got a couple of different things that you're managing at the same time. You can compare and contrast that with a Wild West preview demo thing, I guess, where you're shooting a bunch of guys, and that's actually pretty good. You know, you can knock bullets out of the air, you can dump beneath the barrels, and you need to shoot the guys who are going to come up and try and physically attack you, and they're nice and creepy when it's this big hulking guy about 3 feet taller than you coming up. But for the most part, you just got two guns in your hand and you're just trying to shoot all the things. And, you know, they throw waves at you. Whereas, I guess because Galgun VR is more score-centric, it basically means that there's just more enjoyable aloofness to it, where you don't necessarily, you don't feel like you can take your time, or that you have to. Yeah, you can't, you don't feel like you can take time, but you do feel like you do need to take care of the stuff in front of you and manage stuff, and you learn the gameplay, and yeah, it's a amusingly simple process. And I kind of mentioned before that Old Maid Girl was kind of an example of interacting with character sort of stuff. Galgun VR doesn't quite have the interaction part mostly there, but it does have the same concept of presence of character that's kind of an interesting one, where basically I guess you can call any of the girls. This includes 3 of the teachers, so first year, second year, third year teachers and stuff, to either your home or the classroom, whatever. And it's interesting because they're there, they kind of react to where you're staring at them, and it's usually in a, oh, they kind of like you, so they have different personalities. You have the Chunibyo saying one thing, you have the shy girl with the hair covering her eyes saying a different thing, you have the teacher saying, shh, don't tell the principal, or weird things like that. And it's interesting because if you want to kind of see and interact with it a little more, I found that you need to stand at the back of your play space because it either assumes you're starting there or it intentionally only puts them so far in front of you. And I think it knows which direction is forward. But I don't know. You know, it's really fun stuff. I'm trying to think if there's other things I've tried, but a lot of those are the things that stand out to me, and a lot of that is probably because there's a lot of anime theming in there. So it's not like I'm anti-anime or anything like that. I mean, I'm in VR chat where almost every single avatar is some sort of anime girl. More like 80% are, and the other 20% are something funny, like a Kermit the Frog or a Cory in the House Flat thing on the thing. And yeah, it's all stuff. So I don't know. That's probably going to be distracting me some more as the week continues on, I guess. But again, I have a goal. I do want to finish this because it's okay, and I've given it a chance, and it hasn't led me too astray, I guess. If there's anything about this that I didn't like, it's the light-haired purple girl, the little one in the corner there, underneath my finger. And an amusing situational joke they set up, but then she kind of said some, I'd like to say irresponsible, but I think it's more appropriate to say grossly irresponsible, where she gave the impression to other people that he was peeping, when any decent person would say that she was being an exhibitionist. Where it's like, how the fuck do you do something so stupid as changing clothes in your own room with your fucking window open? It's right next to somebody else's fucking window. Okay. Obviously, I'm talking a little bit more about the details of that joke. And the execution of the joke is funny enough. It's just that the consequences of it... And I don't like her at all. She's done some. They've done some stuff with her where you're supposed to kind of appreciate her, but I don't know. Her reputation's permanently ruined as far as I'm concerned. Anyways, Monster Hunter stuff is going to happen. In fact, my brother, who's been doing Monster Hunter with me this week, is bringing his friend. I don't know. Yeah, if any of y'all saw on Saturday, we actually played with him, and now he'll be physically here. I don't know what that means in terms of who's going to be set up and playing what where, but it does mean you know, there's going to be more Monster Hunter streaming, and I am going to fire up VR chat instead of watch anime while I'm processing stuff, simply because one of the problems I've run into VR chat is that has made it slightly less engaging compared to Steam VR Home is something I can actually fix. And it's not really a fix so much as it's changing a setting that I'm like, oh, is that what it was? I seem to remember leaving that on. It's this idea of personal space, where in VR chat, if somebody gets too close to you, then their avatar just disappears. With the idea being that it's trying to make sure that if you don't want to feel like people are crowding in on you, then you have some control over that. And honestly, I don't care about that. In fact, it would be more interesting to be able to interact with people because I have moving hands, which is something that majority of VR chat people can't do and are probably interested in seeing. So like, I've had plenty of people that have been interested in seeing me stack glasses in the bar and stupid stuff like that. Others, you know, just enjoy having a good conversation, especially when there's nothing really being said. It's just silly things like somebody's trying to speak to me in a foreign language, and they can tell that I am making a non-attempt to repeat some of the words, but incorrectly. So like saying chupacabra, when I hear, I don't even know what he was actually trying to say. But I you know, he kept laughing, he was having a good time, it was all a good time. Where was I going with this? I don't know. I should probably end this now. Y'all, have a nice week.